I was thinking about understandings, and it's an amazing phenomenon, really, because normally we gain knowledge by study or application of your mind, and there's a kind of logical engagement with what you study until you get to a point where it makes sense to you, and then it becomes your domain. You kind of own it. But understandings don't come like that. They don't come from you learning something in that way. They come from like direct from life, without a teacher or without a book or a study lesson. Um, and I guess the material, the subject that they give is different too, because it's what we're talking about when we mean understanding. The capital U is understandings relating to this, to the yearning and who you are and all of that. So it's an amazing thing, really, because it's like a miracle. Because logically, you think, well, how you understand if you study mathematics, then you get good at mathematics. You've applied yourself. The brain has formed a relationship with that subject and comprehended it and expanded in a certain area. Whereas with an understanding, that step isn't there. It's just like at some point you're ready, and life kind of downloads you some information that is free from the universe almost, that is really important to you and to what you need to know on your journey, let's say. So it's a miracle, really. It doesn't make sense in the world of logic. So for me, it's like part of the absolute mystery and magic of this, when you have an understanding, and they're to be kind of respected and bowed down to, and it's just an immersion in the great mystery when that happens, I think.
An understanding isn't an opening, is it? It's different. It's understanding is like seeing something.
Yeah, it's a very good question, very interesting question. Yeah, it's a kind of opening, isn't it, really? It's a sort of, I was going to say an intellectual opening, but I don't mean that at all. But I do mean it relates to the mind, in that it's about comprehension, but it's comprehending aspects of life to do with to do with it, to do with what we're talking about here, life beyond personality.
Like a step further from seeing, right? I always say I like seeing, but understanding is even deeper than that.
Well, I think what I mean by seeing with the capital S is it's a bit like an understanding. But yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe seeing relates to you being open to see life as it is, and by applying that, it's like having X-ray vision, and you see not through personality awareness, but you see clearly beyond that. So yes, that's a see. Yeah, there is a difference. Whereas understanding is suddenly, boom, you've got some bit of the jigsaw, you've got some bit of information downloaded into you. Yeah, but it's a really good distinction. They're related, but yeah, how you get to it is different. Almost the approach to it is different.
For me, an experience of understanding was last week when Priscilla has written the 2 sentences which touched her from last Monday's meeting. And after reading, I did my post, and this came. It was kind of not. It wasn't me writing this. It's strange to explain it, but it was like downloading something and writing it down, and afterwards reading it was kind of, hey, where is this insight coming from? So it's nothing which is Anna
Yeah,
has done. It's something which is there. And interestingly, I can't always connect to this understanding,
yeah,
because if I'm in personality, I I don't understand with not no capital C my understanding. it's
Yeah.
it's interesting. Yeah.
The understanding comes from beyond personality.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it takes you being beyond personality to relate to it,
Mhm.
get
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And for me, it's so helpful to write down understandings either in the group as a post or in my diary, because it's kind of remembering myself about my understandings, because
Yeah.
otherwise they would, yeah, I I think that's part of this journey, to remember myself that I am beyond personality again and again. And reading my own words sometimes is like reading something from someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
I think it's very important to write them down
mhm.
and even share them to the right person only.
Yeah,
That's for sure. Or the
yeah.
right people. Um, because they are your connection to beyond the personality, and it's part of bowing down to them and honoring them and
Mhm,
maintaining that channel to them, to where they come from, which is beyond personality. Yeah,
mhm.
you can have they can come, and if you don't write them down, they can be gone.
Yeah, they are
And
gone.
you it's unlikely you'll get them back. So
Mm,
yeah, it's a sacred thing. Yeah, you have to be in being, as you said, to relate to it, to understand it.
mhm,
I was going to say a high level of consciousness. That's too grand. Being, it's a
mhm,
vibrational level, and if you're not in that vibrational level, like you could say your understanding, which may change your life, you could say to someone who's not getting that vibrational level, and it would mean absolutely nothing to them. So
mhm,
it's about being, and for you using it to yeah, it's a reminder from that level. And as soon as you perceive it again, you're kind of back in that level. Some people call it self-remembering, don't they? It's a kind of remembering. It's
mhm.
remembering who you are. It's remembering that you are that being. And the
Yeah.
understanding is like a link to that. Yeah. Sharing it can be really important, definitely. And because it's almost like drawing it down into the relative, and by saying it to your partner or whoever, you're just, I don't know, it's almost like taking the seed and putting it in good soil and nurturing it and amplifying it also as well. But you're right, you can get clear just in saying it or trying to describe it to someone else. I think there's a bigger symbol in all this too, which is we're talking about the understanding and growing into that, and the understanding is the bit that already knows, and there's a symbol in that of we already know somewhere. It's just tuning to what we already are. I think it's a symbol of that in a way.
Mhm.
Until it breaks through, you're kind of living the illusion that you aren't that. The suffering of personality is living the illusion that you aren't that being, that you aren't.
No, I was going to mention that I found it very interesting, the conversation with the psychologist, Carl Jung, process of individuation,
Yeah.
which I always understood as a process of integration in of the self, of the relative and the absolute.
Mm.
And you gave a great insight as to this same thing that you're saying, how to live this in the relative. That, well, at least for me, that was what the process was pointing at. That there is a way of living this in the relative level, so that there's a blend or an integration, which is what living means, because we're living in this relative level just as much as we are that mystery and essence in the absolute. But the consciousness that allows you, the awareness that allows you to see that you are in this, you are alive, you're living, and what all that it implies as to how to be free in this dimension, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the book I called it the synthesis of the absolute and the relative. That's really what we're talking about. It's like, you know, you are the absolute, but you live as the relative or in the relative. And it goes wrong when, as I was saying in my response, I think, to Elijah, it goes wrong when you start to point only to the absolute and try and ignore or reject the relative. Yeah, it's when you see it, it's such an obvious thing. It's just a repression of, it's like, well, why would you reject this? Yeah, it's so obvious when you see it. It's not the full picture. So the as you say, the integration, you know, the understanding of and connection to the being, and then how, it's what I call it, the adaptation in the book. You know, it's like, well, how do you live that? What does it mean to live that? And then there's also the kind of karma, if you want to call it that, of, well, I've lived like this, which wasn't in attunement with that. And that's got a kind of hangover effect. And it has to heal, really. It has to heal in order to create or leave behind in its wake the space and the vehicle to be able to live in attunement with the absolute in the relative. It's just like a disturbance of that. It takes up psychic space. So that's why the relative and the healing of it is so important, because it just makes more space for this to be lived without impediment, without interference in the end, you know.
Jess, you talk about kind of understanding and clear seeing, and this week I'm kind of wondering about humility. Like, what part of your journey has been kind of informed or filled with like humility, vulnerability, surrender, like as part of like being able to have clear hearing and clear feeling and clear seeing, you know, like this, or the downloading.
In order to even perceive these things, it's all about being able to see through your identification with personality or ego, all of that. So if that's happening, there's no need to be humble. That is the taking away of any claiming for anything. So that's like ground level. That's like step one. And from there, you know, it's just on and on into surrender, and I'm not doing anything. I can't do anything really. So I wouldn't say there was an, you know, that's kind of covered by seeing through identity, I would say. And that's why when you see people who are, you know, arrogant or obviously identified with the personality or success or whatever, you know, they haven't got the step one, you know. But the ironic thing is you can still have insights and you can still see deep things, even if you haven't got that step one. And I think it's because you could see through and get step one, but it can go again. And I think that's to do with the strength of the personality holding on, and the kind of attraction, the pull to be identified as this thing that you have been identified with all your life, because it's given you so much. It's given you a place in the world. It's given you a place in the world and a vehicle in which to interact in the world. So to really get beyond that is no small thing. There's such a pull to it. Even when you've had experiences and you've listened to all the teachers and blah, blah, blah. You know what happens. It's like you learn all the concepts and then you're still hanging on to this adapted identity, which becomes spiritual in nature. But none of that's the same thing as the fundamental first step of seeing through that identification. And no personality wants that, because that is the giving up of what has been up to then your security. But there's a new kind of security that comes, a different kind, obviously, of coming home to the being, because you find your place in the world. Let's say the personality gives you a place in the world, but this gives you a place in the universe. Let's put it like that. It's a metaphor, but I'm trying to give the impression of, like, it's not just the world. It's not the world of man. You're finding your place in the universe, which is ironically not really a place, because it is the universe. But it feels like that because we have the experience of being separate and being in the relative. Yeah.
I like that. I never really thought about humility that way before. What I hear you kind of saying is, I could see, like, some people, myself being one of them, could take on trying to be humble as a personality trait. Where what I hear you saying is the ultimate humility is actually seeing through the identification with any personality. So you could be fully arrogant, but see through it, and that's actually being humble. You don't actually have to have a humble personality to be humble.
Well, yeah. Is the humbleness of humility of a personality really humble? That's what I would say to that. It's not really, is it? It's a doing. Can it be anything other than a doing? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's just another. It's another approach in the relative. It's in the relative. So it's still just more personality stuff. And yeah, you still think you are. If you think you are the humble person, then you're not. That's not true humility. Humility would be that person isn't even me.
Yeah. And again, that points to the very source of all of this, which is that when you see through the separate identity, you can't claim anything. So if you can't claim anything, it sounds even wrong to say that's the ultimate humility, because it's not even humility. It just can't arise. How can you claim something when you know you're not the source of it? It's like you go one step behind. If you're claiming things, I'm the artist, I created this picture. You go one step back, well, I've created it through this, apparent intermediary. And that's good. Yeah, I'm not talking again, obviously, from what I've said earlier. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's wonderful. If you know where it came from, if you know the step one, which is that it starts from life itself and you can't claim it, then you can play the role and you can play, enjoy the wonder of, through this vehicle, this happened. But there isn't this bit coming in saying, I did it. Aren't I clever? You could acknowledge, wow, that was a great bit of writing I did, or whatever. You could definitely acknowledge it like anyone else would. There isn't that bit that comes in and inflates it and uses it to build up these ramparts and build up and strengthen the identity. So it's the ultimate non-doing. When you see through that, you see through the whole lot. It just cuts out so much of all these activities that people think are spiritual, being humble and all of that. It's all taken care of with one cut at the root. And then it just happens, you know. And then, but that then becomes an image that personalities in the world take on. Oh, that's what it means to be spiritual. They're really quiet, or they're really this, or they're really humble, or they're really good, or like all of those things would be there, but they're not a doing, and they're nothing to do with identity. They arise because of the end of that identification.
The last thing the personality wants to do is to be seen through. So my question is like, what gets you in the room of clear seeing? Like, so is there anything that lends itself to this? You know, there's a commitment there that's part of the always forget that word you use, Jez, for like
Yearning?
The yearning. So is it the yearning, the commitment to clear seeing that gets you in the room? Is there anything that lends itself to getting you in the room of clear seeing?
Well, it's a difficult one, this, because already it sounds like, if I do this, will I get that? You know, and then you're kind of, that's how the personality works. And so again, you could be easily backing personality with that. But having said that, you know, if we pull the camera back a bit, I would say that, yeah, I mean, the further you go on this journey, the more, you know, I feel this journey is built upon willingness, readiness, you know, the willingness to feel, willingness to suffer if you have to, the readiness to do that. And even behind all of that is the yearning, because the yearning is the thing that takes you beyond what would normally resist. Don't want to go there. That's too scary. That's too dangerous. So the yearning keeps you moving forward. So all you can say, the most you can say, I think, is that if life has put the yearning in you, then if you notice willingness to feel, willingness to see as well, there's a sort of cooperation that can happen as you become aware of those things, that you just fall more and more into them. Then this thing happening, this unfolding, gets more energy in it because there's less things holding it back. But you can't guarantee anything after that. You can only observe what happens, what life gives you, because ultimately, you know, it can't be turned into a thing and a process and I put this in and get that out. I think the best you can say is if you had the yearning, which is also not up to you, but if you do, and you gradually, you know, sometimes it takes a long time to come into alignment with who we are and the way we're made. So you have to come into alignment with the fact that, well, some people aren't into this, but I am. I found that I seem to be. I have interest in this. There's something in it for me. If you gradually come into alignment with that and then follow it, and then, you know, the readiness, the willingness comes in from that. It's almost like you're like a fertile ground ready to grow. And whatever seeds life blows onto that ground and gives you is then the gift of that. That's probably as much as you can say. It generally seems, if you are the more still you are, and maybe the more clear you are of the personality stuff, there's just more space and possibility for those understandings to come in. My experience is that they do, and it's like life wants. It sounds very poetic, and some people would hate this, but you could put it as like life wants. If you have the yearning and you follow this, it seems like life wants you to get it, to wake up, because it gives these gifts that aid you along the way, whether it's in the form of a person or an understanding or something you read in a book, or yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that willingness and readiness. For me, this week I just realized, you know, I guess I saw clearly new level of kind of what you mentioned, Jez, about the spiritual ego. It's like I saw a new level of like the spiritual ego in me, which just totally keeping me from just that readiness, like just it's just like this arrogance, you're not even aware of it because it's spiritualized. And so, like you said, and so just kind of seeing that, and well, it's just so freeing to like be out of that sort of that cockiness of like I've got this, and it's a new level of I've got this. This is in hand. This is well in hand, and it's just meaningless. It's meaningless to reality.
So that's an understanding you had, and it's what is it bringing to you?
Well, to me, it opened up humility, like real humility, like just maybe readiness is as good a word as any. Just like, whoa, like because your personality pretends you're in the room. Like, oh yeah, I'm so close to like just
Which actually stops you. Ironically, yeah.
Exactly.
It sounds to me like that understanding gives you freedom. Your possibilities just became so much larger.
Yeah.
I would say the beginning of freedom, because your the personality is telling you that you you had more before. So yeah.
I was thinking of the personality as being a lot of closed doors. And with that kind of a wider understanding, you have a lot more room for expression. The expression of I have to use the word love. I don't know what else to say. But the expression of that is not just coming through you, but it's coming to you, and it's all around you, and it's a huge spaciousness suddenly in which you find yourself in this large, expansive universe of possibilities that the personality knows nothing about.
That's a good way of putting it. Personality knows nothing about it. Yeah. The personality wants to be in control, and it wants to know. And it is about not knowing, really. And that sounds contradictory to what I was saying earlier about the understandings, right? So yeah, there's some things you're given and like if you have an understanding, it's true, you're utterly behind it. It's got a certain power to it that it's true. So that, but it's leading to the innocence and the freedom and the openness of not knowing. So that's beyond personality. Personality wants to know, and in this, you're more and more going into, I don't know. Certain things about the relative, but outside of that small perimeter, you don't know. Even answering that question from Ben, it's like, if you do this, will you get that? It's, I don't know. You may. You can't even say that. Yeah. You can't. That's what I find with teachers and stuff who get very dogmatic. You just think this is actually, it just feels wrong because there's more and more into unknowing when it comes down to it. I'm aware this sounds very contradictory because there are some things you do know. You know more in some way about personality, because in order to get out of it, you have to go into the center of it And then you start to understand your psychology, other people's psychology. So in one sense, you know a lot about that sort of level. But that leads you to the bigger level of knowing that you don't know. And anything you do know or anything you can see is not yours. And it's given to you, and you can't own it and you can't claim it. So all of that is the very opposite of what personality wants for you. It wants to control, safety, nailing things down, knowledge, security, all of that.